what did it do to you and what can we do to help you heal that so you can grow and evolve and change and be the person you really came here to be, because that's a primary thing that really gets squashed with a narcissistic or toxic parent.
Welcome to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, where world-changing spiritual entrepreneurs come to deeply awaken the power within to bring forth their greatest purpose, while enjoying being in tune with all life and real wealth in all aspects of their lives. I'm your host, Daniel John Hanneman. And welcome everybody to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. I'm so grateful to be with you. I almost want to start this episode with a channel prayer. Source is all there is. God is all there is. Recognize the infinite power that you are, and you do on this show. So I want you to meet this amazing being I have today. She's wow, she's got a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and background, especially around the narcissistic stuff. But the difference, maybe she's going to share some differences in how she goes about it versus others. I know it, I feel it, I taste it, so I know it's real. And then she's going to show you how to really claim your power back. To really shine as who you really are in the process. And she has an amazing process that helps you to do that. So I'm really grateful to have you on the show today, Dr. Meg.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Likewise. All right, let me share more about you to the audience. So, transpersonal psychologist, holistic nutritional chef. I think that's just an amazing background. Best-selling author and speaker, Dr. Meg Haworth helps wounded ACONs, adult children of narcissists, to become healed icons in her Iconic Me therapeutic coaching program. An icon is independent, confident, original, and naturally you. Oh, that's so wonderful. She also offers online courses, a YouTube channel, and is the host of the Toxic Parent Recovery Summit. She offers holistic solutions, including your own emotional release technique that helps you to let go of energy and core negative beliefs held in the body from abuse that can lead to illness. So yeah, absolutely. And even if we've had the best parents of all time, maybe not then, but if we had the best, cleanest energy parents of all time, usually they got their quirks and things we've downloaded from them that aren't super empowering. So this is no judgment on I already know. I mean, I'll just put it out there. There's no judgment on the narcissists out there in the world. It's just we're doing the best we can, all of us, right? So, because that's one of my things that was coming up for me coming into the show. I'm like, because I don't like the idea, and I'm not saying you would be this way at all with what you teach, but I don't like the idea of identifying an evil or bad group, no matter who they are, even if it was
Yeah.
Hitler. I mean, like, I don't even like that. Like, okay, why are they perfect? And what's the wound they have, and all that stuff, and diving
Mhm.
into that. But, Hitler created a lot of mayhem too. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of wounding and therefore a lot of learning and opportunity for people, right? So again, diving into what this stuff is about, probably end advance,
Mhm.
unfortunately, maybe. I don't know, but it's just my nature. But Dr. Meg, I mean, I'm just really looking forward because I know you're very much about intuition and going deeper with things and stuff. So we can start wherever you want, but I appreciate that you help people to come back to wholeness to have experienced this type of abuse.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's really complex, all the different things that it really can damage in a person. And to me, that's the most important thing is what did it do to you and what can we do to help you heal that so you can grow and evolve and change and be the person you really came here to be, because that's a primary thing that really gets squashed with a narcissistic or toxic parent is you get lost in the shuffle, like your identity. Who am I? The big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? I mean, those are like the questions that help us to evolve spiritually. And those are the ones that really get so lost on people that are raised by narcissistic parents, because you have to focus completely on that parent.
Right.
instead of on yourself. And that parent is also not bringing out the best parts in you unless they're getting something from it. So, like if you have this great talent, they're using your talent so that they can stay in that superior position.
Mhm.
And it's we know like love and it's it's not about hierarchy, you know. It's not about superiority, who's better, who's worse. So, but that's what narcissistic abuse is about.
Right, right. I mean, I guess there's so much talk in the mainstream even, right, of narcissists and stuff. And
Yeah.
again, with my clinical psychology background, I can I've got the old DSM-4 here and stuff. We can look all this stuff up and see what it says. But what are we on? DSM-5, 6, or whatever now? I don't even know. I've lost
Yeah.
track of the manual numbers. But I talk to my daughter sometimes about it because she has some understanding of the new versions, and she's like, "Dad, what you're telling that's the old stuff." I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't know. That's what they used to teach us. They had us memorize that DSM, literally, like almost literally, like okay, you need to know every single diagnosis by heart, all the most of everything about it, not every word that they have in there, but so why am I saying all that? I'm just saying like we work very my point is we work very hard to try to figure out what these things are, right?
Mhm.
So but what I know you have these ways we'll talk about later of identifying, was your parent a narcissist and all that stuff, right?
Right.
So, and we'll talk about it during the show, absolutely. But what is it? How will we even know if our parent is a narcissist? I mean, I would think for some people it's going to be hard to discern. Like, I don't know if they're a narcissist or not. Maybe.
Yeah, and it's something that I find routinely is very hard for people to admit about their own parent, and then it happens in stages. So they start to wake up to it, and then even as they go through therapy with me, they'll continue waking up to it more and more and more as they understand, like, oh wow, that's what's been happening all this time. And so some of the key components are a lack of empathy. So your parent isn't really putting themselves in your place and thinking about, like, oh, if I do this, this will impact her that way. When you don't have that empathy, you don't have that ability to feel with another person and think about how this thing will impact her. So that's hard. That's really hard to have a parent like that, but it gets so normalized. Another thing that gets really normalized are the stories they tell, stories, lies, whatever you'd like to call them, but they'll have a story that they'll stick to that wasn't the actual truth. And sometimes it's completely made up. And they'll tell one person one story and somebody else another story. And they do this to divide you.
Mhm.
And then also it'll be such a shocking story that you won't want to check it out with the other person because it's like, oh my gosh, they did that again.
Mhm.
That will continue to divide them.
Mhm.
And then there's that silence element that happens with it as well. But some of the other key signs are things like they have a very grand sense of self.
Mhm.
Um, and whether that be they're like, I'm the best person at everything, I know everything about everything, or they could show up being the victim of everything and everyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's different ways that this gets expressed,
Mhm.
but their sense of self is really completely made up.
Mm.
Because really what's happening is underneath they're extremely insecure. They're filled with shame and guilt. They usually had some kind of trauma, or they watched narcissism in the generation before, and they're just modeling those things, and it really hooked into that. But I also look from the spiritual point of view, and I think when you hear people talking about narcissism, like on all the different channels, and I have my YouTube channel, but a lot of them are when I look at this from the spiritual point of view, did we come in to experience this? Did we come into this life to experience a lack of empathy, or to experience um, uh, being highly critical and sometimes even cruel to our own children. What agreements do we have with each other? I mean, that's a whole other
Right.
discussion that a lot of people aren't, I don't see people out there really talking about that piece because
Right.
it's not scientific,
Right. Right. Well, yeah, I mean,
Mm,
like I always think about it from the standpoint of spiritual level. Well, I know this might sound bad in a way, but once you start getting some healing and start getting some perspective, it's like, yeah, why did I draw this parent to me, right? Or why did I draw whatever came in your life to you? I mean, there's got to be a reason. And that's where, with what you do to help discern that, and me with I do energy scans and stuff, tuning into people to see what's going on. Like we start to see that. That's where really the more you talk about, I forget the exact term, but the whole person, kind of
mm,
whole, the wholeness of who you are, bringing yourself back into that is where all this stuff points into, correct? I mean, that's how I
mhm.
see it. I mean, it's like it's all trying to bring us into wholeness. So whoever the abuser was, ultimately, like, at first it's hard to say, but it's kind of like, well, thank you, like you're trying to bring me into
Yeah.
wholeness, right? That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really hard concept to grasp
Yeah.
when your own parent's been really cruel.
Right.
However, it's where I got to. I mean, and this comes from my own personal story of having been
Mhm.
through this and still dealing with the narcissistic parent at this point in my life. It's low contact and, thousands of miles away, but still it's there are a lot of challenges to embracing those spiritual concepts when you go through something so difficult from your own parent. But it's to me, it was the most liberating thing, when
Mhm.
I was able to really see like, hey, this person is really my greatest teacher. As hard as it is to accept that, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be out there helping people today. And I love my life. I love that I get to do this. I don't feel like it's any kind of a burden or that I was burdened by that experience. And oh, this is the only thing I can do because of that. I could do
Mhm.
1,000 things. And I did do a lot of other things and before I came to this,
Mhm.
um, but this is where I do feel that sense of fulfillment and purpose and why I'm here. And
Mhm.
so knowing that that parent helped me get there
Mhm.
at this point, yeah, I do think that parent,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
but
maybe it's
it was
down
a
the line.
process.
Yeah, maybe down the line before we can get to that level
Yeah.
for sure. But because when you're still unpacked, first there's denial, right? You don't even realize it's a thing. Then
Yep.
you awaken to it, you get angry, right? I mean,
Yeah.
upset, sad, all those. It's like a grieving process, right? You get to
For sure.
acceptance, the more you can see, like, yeah, okay, I see that this is a gift to me,
Yeah.
ultimately. But yeah, it's challenging. So I guess I wonder about the uh, because things these filters. Yeah, like one of the, I mean, I guess it's helpful to have the label, but then again, like that's a whole nother discussion maybe, but I don't know, maybe it's worth talking about. Like the label, you're a narcissist, because people like have it like in their reticular activating system, and right, like they're constantly looking. I don't know, she seemed a little too confident. Like I think she's a narcissist too.
Yeah. Yes,
Like it could get a
exactly.
little crazy, who gets accused of a
Yeah.
narcissist. So how can people you know, get off of that if they find themselves like oversensitive to like the idea that people are narcissists if they've been abused or otherwise, or just sensitive to it. They're empathetic, and that's the idea like the narcissist attached to the empathic one, and they're just beat the hell
Yeah.
out of the empathic one. And so I
Yeah.
can laugh now, right? But like, you know what I mean? But like
Mm-hmm.
that idea, and it's like how can we not go, first of all, we want to get through the denial, but also there can be the other side where we're over perceiving,
Yeah.
yeah, we all have a little narcissism in us. We all have a little
Yeah.
empathy in us, hopefully. I mean, so what's your perspective on all that?
Yeah, so I think narcissism is on a spectrum and that we all have it to a certain degree and maybe in one area of our lives and not so much in the others.
Mm, mhm.
Um, but it is a buzzword these days, and people are automatically just calling someone a narcissist. Like if they, you lied to me, you cheated on me, you gaslit me. Well, not everybody who does those things are narcissists.
Right.
And it may not even be coming from narcissistic tendencies.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so it's really careful. It's really important to be careful not to just peg people into those roles. But it's also important not to dismiss when you've been raised by one or when you've been in a relationship with one. And again, it's a waking up process.
Mhm.
And I think it's very useful to know these things on the human psychological level because it helps us to really understand all of the damage that got done and
Right.
so that we can start to heal that damage.
Right.
Um, so there's some really good points of understanding it and knowing it, but I think most people who when they realize their parent was this or is this, again, it's awakening up process that continues to happen as they learn more and more. So I say be careful, you know,
Mhm.
do really research it and be careful with how you're using that. It could be somebody who has, you know, a horrible attachment style.
Right.
They're just jerks. They're just not
You're
really
just a
nice
jerk. You're no
people.
narcissist. You're just a jerk.
I love Dr. Ramani has this because she's like the foremost person in the world at this point,
Mm.
Dr. Ramani, and she has this thing where she does is he or she an a-hole or a narcissist? And so
And
she'll,
differentiate.
she'll examine that with people. And I just think it's really funny because it's true, so it is something to be careful about. But
Mhm.
it's also important to not dismiss because that's
Right.
something that you will do over and over and over again as the adult child. As an ACON, you will dismiss
Mhm.
what happened because you were trained to normalize it, to
Right.
dismiss things, to dismiss red flags, to people please, to
Right.
focus on that narcissistic person and not on yourself.
Right. Right. So, tell us about how that was for you growing up, and who, one or both your parents narcissists? I'm not totally clear on that yet. I have a
Yeah.
suspicion because I'm intuitive, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, but I'd love to hear more about that and how your process of discovery happened as well, like how it affected you, and then what your discovery process was.
Yeah. So, yes, one parent. And then the other parent had to comply with a lot of unreasonable requests in order to get
Hmm.
through the day. So
Yeah.
that happens a lot where people think that both parents were, but it's like, no, that other parent was being abused too. And they didn't know any other way but to
Hmm.
comply. So I think it's an important distinction for people to think about, if they're really looking into. And so for me, it took a very long time. It was a waking up process. And because in my family, there's four siblings, and because that narcissistic parent divides the siblings from each other in various ways, both subtle and overt, that among the siblings, I thought one sibling was the problem and another sibling of mine thought that other sibling was the problem.
Uh,
They're the narcissist, they're the problem
right.
because they're so good at deflecting, using the smoke and the mirrors to deflect
Mhm.
off of themselves onto
Right.
somebody else, projecting all the time, the blame shifting, which is a huge
Right.
thing, a huge red flag for narcissism.
Mhm.
um, and so they're so used to doing that. So that was part of my experience. So for the longest time, I thought it was one of my siblings. And so I did all this research and read all these books and tried to learn how to deal with that sibling. and but as my parents aged and I watched the one parent really abusing the other one who was more incapacitated,
Mhm.
that's when it was like ton of bricks in the face. And this is something that will happen where you're just like, wow. And a lot of people don't really come to truly getting it until
Mhm.
they're in their 40s or their 50s and 60s, where they're watching their parent age.
Yeah.
And they're watching those behaviors get worse and worse, especially if dementia is in the mix,
Mm, mhm.
because now they can't track their stories anymore. And
Yes.
so you start putting those pieces together. It just can be very, very confusing and take quite a while to
Mhm.
really see the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, it's just like it makes me think about a lot of things, and I think like you could be in a question mark for sure with a parent. Like there's some things you're saying and people immediately are like, "Yep, that's definitely my parents," or whatever, you know. There's probably
Yeah.
some people like me that probably think like, yeah, you know, maybe there's some characteristics of it, but
Hmm.
the full spectrum of all that stuff you said, I'm like, yeah, nah, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But like myself, like I've been, yeah, I've got a little narcissism. I've been known to of course, the epitome of a narcissist to a lot of people these days is one person. You know who that is, right? I get the
Yes.
idea. Well, it must be. But then I don't know 100% because that's his public persona. Is he always like that in public or person and private is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. Anyway, so in private, probably to some degree, from what I've heard, but maybe not as much, right? So because a lot of it's a showman. Like I come
Yeah.
out and everything's the best. It's always going to be the best with me in charge. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, so some of it's salesmanship, and then some of it's these traits. So yeah, it's like trying to tease it out, but yeah, the I think it's just so fascinating. That's why I got into psychology. It's just like
Yeah. Oh, it is
pulling it all
fascinating.
apart and then assessing, because assessment was like kind of the thing I really loved, you know. And but I have some of this too, because I'll be a person. I'll be like, yeah, you can't beat me. I'm the best you ever was at something or whatever. And I don't look like that type of person, but I can be. And people will be
Yeah.
like, yeah, whatever. You think you're number one at everything. And sometimes they think that. I'm not always like that,
Yeah.
but I've been that way enough for even some of my own kids to say that about me. Are like, yeah, whatever. You always think you're the best. Even if you lose, you say you're still the best.
That's right. Well, yeah, what you're talking about is competition, being
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're in a society that really favors that, is
Mhm.
competition. And,
Mhm.
in sports or something that you do develop and you get really good at. But it's a
Mhm.
big difference with a narcissist who uses jealousy and envy as the root of competition. That's what they use to uphold anything that has anything to do with competition. For you, it might be a healthy competition, where like,
Hopefully,
yeah, I'm really
most of
good
the
at
time it
that.
is.
And yeah, maybe I'm a sore loser sometimes because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought I
yeah.
should have won that round or whatever it
I'm
is.
like, I could
But
be a sore winner too. I
a
have
sore
been
winner.
cruel at times. I because only usually the few times that's happened, especially, is just when I got so angry. I was just like in a domination role. I'm just like, I win and up yours or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've done that any time recently, but in the past. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we all have interactions with people like this. So what is the damage of that then that you see, like for
Mm.
yourself to start with, and then what you've seen for the people you help?
Yeah, so it's pretty universal that self-esteem. So the wound of self-worth is what I talk about in my course, the 5 primary wounds of parental narcissistic abuse. We can all relate to the self-worth wound because there's always this feeling of being put in what's called the double bind, which you may be aware of.
Mhm.
It's a manipulation tactic that a narcissistic person will use to make you feel less than all the time. They want you to be inferior, so it's easier to control you that way. So they'll use criticism and judgment, and you'll never get it right no matter what you do. So they may ask you to do, "Hey, can you do this thing?" Sure, how, and you learn to ask a lot of questions about how
Yes,
would you like me to do it because you want to
right,
get it right. And this is
right,
where that people pleaser starts to get developed. So
right.
you want to get it right. You go ahead and you do the task they asked you to do. You apply all of the answers they gave you. And
Yeah.
you do it exactly right as they said. you go back to them, you didn't do that right, or or it
Oh,
could be, well, I never asked you to do it that way.
right,
So then they're
right.
gaslighting
Yes,
and
yes.
confusing you and making you doubt your reality, so
Right,
that now you think you're the crazy one, but you asked all the questions, you did all the things, you did
right,
exactly what they told you to do. And so they put you in the damned if you do, damned if you don't double bind over
right,
and over and over again. This
right.
crushes self-esteem
Yeah,
and self-trust, which is another one of the wounds, because now you don't trust yourself
right.
to carry out the tasks in the correct way.
Hmm.
It's so you can start to see just by this little bit of explanation, like how
Yeah.
crazy making this could be, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, maybe I didn't do it right. Maybe I didn't hear what I thought I heard. I guess not, like because they're
Mhm.
very confident in their response, right? I would, like the whole idea, the person that's clearest wins, right? So that's what dominates in the energy
Yeah.
is like, they know they're not wrong, so I must be, like that's what happens, right? I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it gets really, it's complex. And so so your self-value, your self-worth can just is usually rock bottom. Um, and also because you pick up where they leave off in terms of the criticism and the judgment, self-judgment, and you beat yourself up with it because you're like, oh, I didn't get that right. If I'd only done it this way, oh, no one likes me. Because you'll feel too that your narcissistic parent really doesn't like you. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you're a kid, at any point in because you want your in your development, because you want your parent to love and adore you and to hear you and understand you and be there for you and help nurture you. And none of those things happen with a narcissistic parent. So you'll quite literally think you're it's something beyond not good enough, to the point of I don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something they communicate to you through their actions and through their words.
Hmm.
And growing up feeling like you don't matter is really dense, it's really heavy. So
Yeah.
so that wound of self-worth is a huge one that we have to learn how to cultivate our own self-worth. And that's really, really important, because you can't rely on that parent to do it. The other parent might have tried really hard,
Hmm.
but because you had these two different voices, the parent who was just trying to nurture you, and then the parent who was telling you how horrible you were. Oftentimes what we end up doing is really believing the parent that told us we were horrible, because of the shame factor.
Hmm.
Shame tells us, hey, I'm a bad person.
Hmm.
And because it's a shame driven disorder, that narcissistic parent is projecting all of the shame that they will not deal with. This is
Right.
why they don't take accountability for anything.
Hmm.
So it's the shame and the guilt they're not dealing with. They're projecting it onto you. If you're an empath and is sensitive, then you're sponging this in. And you're also intuitive if you're those two
Right.
things.
Right.
And your intuition is being used solely for negative experiences. And our intuition is vast and expansive.
Hmm.
And our empathy is too. And they're pulling on our empathy as well. And
Mm.
so learning to hone your intuition is something that will help you with your self-trust and your self-worth.
Right.
Um, and honing it hones your empathy too, so that you use that for all of the good, positive, beautiful things that empathy is meant to attach us to, like compassion and caring and love and kindness and joy and all of those things, which we just get completely disconnected from those things with this type of parent.
So like I look for what I have questions about. Like I'm like, yeah, it totally makes sense. I totally resonate with everything. And then I always have a question though, like because there's always
Mhm.
something I'm wondering about. Like,
Sure.
so could it be that, I mean, so because it definitely has to be on a range, right? This stuff because I don't think every person that's significantly even narcissistic has no regard for their child, for example, in that relationship. I don't believe it now. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Like, but I think in some cases you're right. Like they don't really have any regard for you. You're just the thing, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
I totally believe that. But I think there's this range, isn't there? Like
Yeah.
where no, but she I think she really cares about me, but you're getting all this other crap, you know, at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm just guessing, but yeah.
Yeah. So this is where it gets super confusing, right?
Yeah.
And from the research that we know is that people who have the disorder, they see their children as objects. So they
Right.
see them as extensions of them.
Yes.
So it's like you're an arm or a leg. So I should be able to move my arm and my leg and make it do what I want.
Right.
But when they find out they can't, because you're an actual person, which they're never going to acknowledge.
Mm,
So that's where it gets really complicated, where because there is that false self that they're projecting, they can
mhm.
be so sweet and so nice, but they're using that to manipulate you to get something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it might be to keep you in their back pocket until they need you for something.
Right.
So they're just being really nice to you. And then
Right.
you learn how to comply to keep them in that nice place because they're so much easier to deal with when they're there, but they're just using that again.
Right.
Um, so that true self underneath that's insecure,
Right.
needy,
Right.
terrified,
Right.
angry, jealous, competitive, vengeful, all of those, that's what is really operating underneath the surface.
Hmm. So you would say that the person that would just have traits of narcissism, yeah, maybe they have a heart that really cares about their child, but the one that's full blown diagnostic, you can diagnose as, being a narcissist, probably not.
Yeah.
Is what I'm hearing out of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how I was trained too. That yeah, what you just said, the object and all that stuff, and so, yeah, I mean, we all see examples to some degree, especially these days. Now it's a hot topic, right? People are
Yeah.
looking at who's a narcissist, who isn't, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, even examining ourselves, because there's people that are very empathic. They'll say, "But wait a minute, maybe I'm a narcissist. Maybe I'm both." You know, I
Yeah.
and yeah, you probably are. You have traits of both. I mean, that's how I see myself. I'm sure I have traits of both. I mean, but
Mm.
which side am I? I don't know. Maybe probably way more empathic than I feel a heck of a lot of energy and love for people. So I think I'm
Yeah.
probably more on that side. I definitely don't have any a disregard for my kids. It's just completely the opposite. So I
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
like the best thing ever in my life in a way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, like there's nothing that could be better. So just who they are and all that stuff. So go on and I could go on and on, right?
Yeah.
But so my point is like, so those are some of your tests too to see. Well, you think you're not caring enough. You get too caught up in yourself, but we start looking deeper into it. It's not as you're not as bad as you think, because I could definitely see where people might over evaluate themselves with the narcissism for themselves as well, I would think. Or
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
I don't know. That's what I would think. I mean, because I see it in myself a little bit,
yeah.
where I wonder, like on certain traits at least.
But this brings up something really important that needs to be said here too, is that
Mhm.
a person who has the disorder cannot
Right.
self-reflect.
Yeah, I saw that one coming.
And
I
that's
really,
that's that's
really
a
had
key
it. You wouldn't be
difference,
thinking about
you
it, right?
know?
That's true. That's
So,
completely true.
and
They're
one of the things I do with my clients and do with myself continually is check in with myself, because you watch that narcissistic parent just use at this point, I have like 37 manipulation tactics on my Instagram, like little reels. Uh, they use so many manipulation tactics on a daily basis that there are things that you may do to
Mhm.
manipulate where you're recycling a behavior, which is very
Yeah,
different than being
yeah,
narcissistic and
right,
using those behaviors, those manipulation tactics in a calculated way on a
right.
regular basis to keep yourself in the control space and
Yes.
keep everyone else beneath you. So
Mm.
that's a primary difference. If you're able to self-reflect like you're doing right now, you're just like, wait a
Right.
minute, no, I'm actually really empathetic with my kids, you know, like
Right.
I'm overly so, you know. So if
Right.
you
Right.
can see yourself in your own reality, it's like, it's really interesting to me that narcissism, the disorder, cuts them off. I always say it cuts them off from real love coming in and real love going out. So the sending and receiving of love, it cuts them off from that observer,
Mm-hmm.
the benevolent observer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, you describe their parent or the narcissist in their life as like, you know, a 45-year-old toddler, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever their age is, just insert
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
number. But they
Yes.
they always feel like a toddler because that's where they believe that development got arrested right there in toddlerhood.
Yeah.
And so telling them no is that's when they throw fits. And that's what they say is the quick narcissist test is if you tell them no and what they do.
Yes.
Um, you know, if they try to talk you into it and bully you into it, push you into it,
Shame you. Just
shame
shame
you into it. Yeah, exactly. It's
you.
like,
Right.
you know, you're going to do what I tell you to do or else, you know.
Right.
And the or else is usually pretty very punitive. And they operate from
Silent can be silent treatment, right?
yes.
Just
Yeah.
cut off emotionally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
The
all kinds of
silent
things. Yeah.
treatment is a discard. You know, that's
Yeah.
one of the things they talk about a lot. Narcissism is the discard, where
Mm-hmm.
they just kind of get rid of you, and a silent treatment is part of that. And then
Mm-hmm.
they may start hoovering you back in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just being so nice to you and just like, oh, and they may apologize, but the apologies are going to be performative to
Right.
get what
Exactly.
they want. It's not
Right.
going to be a
Right.
genuine, oh my gosh, I really screwed up. I treated you horribly. I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Because then that would be, I'm taking ownership.
Right. Right.
You know, it's a completely different, yeah, it's,
Yeah, they may not even address the issue whatsoever, but they'll just come back
no,
being super sweet. Oh, sweetie, blah blah blah. You're my favorite, or whatever.
exactly. They act
Right?
like nothing happened, nothing happened. And that's another piece of frustration that really silences the adult children of narcissists is that they don't get to ever have any closure on anything that happens. So there's nowhere to go in any conversation.
Hmm.
So you believe you, first of all, will be terrified of confrontation because
Hmm.
you never got to say your piece. Or if you did, it was just a massive argument that the narcissistic person used as a way to stay in that superior position to get what they call supply. To me, it's just it's energy. They're taking your emotional energy and using emotions to batter you with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's they're just emotional alchemists
Right.
in like the worst possible way, you know?
Now, isn't it common for the person on the receiving end to feel like, but even when they know all this, like, but how do we fix them? How do we help them? How do we get them to change? Right? Can't they be
Oh
healed?
yeah. Yeah.
and and that's a losing proposition. I believe it's sort of
Yeah.
like with psychopath, sociopathic people and things like that. Uh, try changing them. Good luck.
Yeah. It's not going to happen. And that's they'll often say, you know, oh, I'll change, I'll do anything you want, I'll go to therapy, I'll do, you know. So, but they're just bargaining to buy more time and try to get back into your good graces. It's just another way they do it.
Hmm.
um, but they can't change, and that's part of what you learn, you know, through the therapeutic process is
Right.
like you get to a point where you and this is the hard part is you give up the hope that they'll ever show up for you as the parent that you always wanted,
Hmm.
that they'll be able to work through things with you. They're never going to be able to show up that way. Whenever you give that up, you give up that hope, it's a good day. Honestly,
Right.
it's a hard place to come to, but it's an important place to come to.
Right.
So,
Yeah, acceptance again, really, of what is, in a sense. So you have a holistic way of helping people. Can you tell us more about we'll start with the ways that you help, and listeners, keep tuning in. We're kind of giving you the insights, and that's healing in itself. This conversation, it can be healing and getting awareness. I know it's helping me look at stuff and feels nurturing to me. So I would love to hear more about how you go about helping people that have these um, type of wounds and narcissistic wounding. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So because narcissistic abuse, as I mentioned, it's an energetic form of abuse.
Mhm.
And they use emotions as a way to batter you, to really hurt you. And they're very, very effective at doing this. And so what it does is it drains you, it drains your system over time. And so a lot of people get physically ill. I was one of them, had over a dozen illnesses by the time I was in my 20s, in and
Mhm.
out of doctor's offices. I'd be in bed for weeks at a time on 9 different medications and just kept getting more and more diagnoses. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this. Um, and so this happens to a lot of people. So when you start to realize that your energy has been drained
Mhm.
over and over and over again, I see it as like the cords between you and that parent, and they're just plugging into you and draining you. So I work with those cords and helping people to release those energetic cords that are going on between them. So we look at the energy dynamics between the narcissistic family members and the narcissistic parent. But we also do whole person integration technique. So what that technique does is we work with the emotion itself. So say like shame, guilt, pain, like the negative emotions that get lodged in our systems from these experiences. And when you have those experiences over and over and over again, it becomes programming. And then there's a belief, a negative core belief associated with that emotion. So maybe you're holding it in your heart. I keep putting my hands on my heart. So,
Mhm.
so maybe you're holding a tremendous amount of anger in your heart. We get really angry. We can get full of rage because there's no place to go to work through anything. And so
Mm.
we'll hold that rage in our hearts, for instance. And so I work directly with that. So what is that rage thinking, feeling, believing? So that the person is seeing things from an outside perspective, from the observer point of view, where they're observing how that emotion is affecting their body. They're feeling like, oh my gosh, there's a burning in my chest. And oh my gosh, I have lung issues.
Mhm.
Huh. So they start to put those pieces together. And this is why it's a whole person integration. And so then we go through that whole process of understanding what the emotion's been going through and how it's been draining them over the years and what the limiting belief is. And then we do a whole process to help them release it. When they start to see the holistic connections mentally, emotionally, physically, and energetically, how that's affected them in their lives, they're like, well, I want to release this. I don't want to hold on to this anymore. I see what it's doing to me and how it's blocking me from having the life that I want. It's blocking me from fully loving or letting somebody in or from trusting or all those issues that we develop along the way. And then there's the release process, but then there's also a replacement. So it's deleting an old app that's just doesn't
Mhm.
serve you. It served you at
Mhm.
the time to get through that upbringing you had, and then installing a new one. But
Mhm.
it's not really new. It's
Mhm.
really you. it's
Right,
it's the
right,
essence of who you are.
right.
The compassion, the love, the kindness,
Mhm.
the caring, the peace, all of those things that everybody wants to feel and that we get completely disconnected from
Yeah.
having been parented like that.
Yes, yes. Not to mention the stuff we came in with in the first place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean that's been my experience in doing, as a healer, and a healer is like doing healing work.
Hmm.
Um, is I still look at it sort of. I always say it's like turning zeros into ones, computer language. Like I know it sounds very simplistic, it seems so complex and so deep,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's sort of like that. The energy is in this retrograde, and then we're gonna bring it into an enlightened state, right? So, because every,
Yeah.
whatever that when it's in its truest form or higher vibrational form, however you want to look at it, then it's like everything, oh, everything is beautiful and more so, right? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, totally. That's been my experience with the healing process, and you do it specifically in your own techniques and ways for people with this specific type of wound, which makes it you extremely valuable because there's not too many people. I haven't heard of anybody else necessarily. I mean, maybe somebody does it, but it does this work in the way that you do. I mean, so
Mhm.
you've learned this on your own to some degree. I mean, you've learned a lot from others, but you've learned like how to put it all together in a unique, kind of a unique way. It sounds like to bring healing into people's lives that have this background. Is that right? Or
Yeah, and it's of course based on what I learned in my PhD program, about reactive selves and how we are projecting those into the world with our limiting beliefs and how we hold those in our body. So there's, the foundation there was really solid in helping me come up with that with whole person integration technique. And incidentally, it also, the technique can take you into the inner child and where she or he is stuck in the body as well, and to help you release those parts of the self. So because the inner child of course is incredibly important to the process, but I think a key difference too is that um, with the inner child or even these reactive selves, it's the most loving part of you. It's your loving self, your higher self, that does the healing. It's
yeah,
engaging that spiritual part of you to do the healing, because that's really what works. That's
right.
it's the only permanent part of you. So, and that's what we keep evolving, is that permanent part of us, is that soul.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're all roads are towards this wholeness, ascension, whatever you want to call it, but that's the good news, folks. Everybody's like, "Are we done yet?" Like, until you get past, that's a phase too, I think. It's like once you get past, like, are we done yet? Although we all have our moments with that one, probably. But like, yeah, is like, is realizing how beautiful everything is, right? Once you can get into that, but the work needs to be done, in order to get to that sort of state on a more perpetual, more regular or perpetual basis. So,
Mhm.
um, so I know you have a few different, couple, one or two different ways at least that you help people,
Yeah.
but you have one main, I think, one really powerful main way that you help people, from what I know so far, to directly work with people. And
Mhm.
can you tell them more about how you would, if someone was like, "Hey, I need someone to help me with this stuff. I've been working with therapists and stuff, but their approach isn't working for me." How do you go about helping them more specifically? What do you offer?
Yeah, so I have my Iconic Me one-on-one coaching program, and it's either 3 months or 6 months, kind of based on whatever the person really needs. And
Hmm.
so many people that come to me, they have hit a wall in therapy where they feel like, okay, I've gotten everything I can, and I feel like I just keep spinning in my story over and over again. But they also have a more spiritual perspective,
Hmm.
or they're calling out for that and they just don't know how to name it.
Hmm.
And so they may feel like, okay, I want to go into my body, into my subconscious mind, and release some of these energies that I can feel are blocking me. I
Hmm.
need to let those go. I need to work with the inner child and know that she or he is wounded, and I'm feeling those blockages too. They may be sick. So, like I had over a dozen illnesses. A lot of times it's digestive,
Hmm.
um, IBS, ulcers, because if you think about, like, your center of personal power just gets drained. And then you're always having those icky feelings dealing with a narcissistic person, like the ick factor is really high.
Right.
And if you feel that ick over and over again for years, it can really make you sick.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So when people come with to me, they may have autoimmune diseases, they may have cancer or dealt with cancer. So because the technique that I created, I've seen people literally heal persistent symptoms and conditions overnight. because we got to the emotional root cause of that illness and how did it manifest through the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs, and how those settled, came through the energy field and settled into the body. Because, it's all one ultimately, right?
Right,
Your
right.
holistic system, mental, emotional, physical, and energetic and spiritual, it's all one thing. And so this is an encompassing kind of technique that helps all of that. But the other thing I do is offer nutrition and cooking to help people with food to support the body to heal itself while they're going through their processes. Because many of us use coping mechanisms like food or alcohol or drugs to try to get through all of the pain that we have to deal with on an everyday basis. And we try like all these diets and all this stuff, but until you get to the emotional root cause and release that, it makes
Mhm.
it very hard for you to carry out any kind of good plan for feeding your body nourishing food, because it's all vibration too. Food has a vibration and energy just like emotions do, and so it's releasing that emotional toxicity and the food and environmental toxicities as well.
Do you want to meditate and make money? Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Let it be fun. Go to yoursacredpurpose.com and get your free Meditate Make Money meditation today.
Mm, mhm. Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm all for the nutritional solutions. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I always remember for whatever people think of him, it's fine. But one thing I really liked that he said, many things I've liked he said over the years, but the Joel Osteen thing, I don't know if you remember him saying this, but I think a lot of people have heard of it. He says, it's not the demons that are getting you, it's the pancakes. Like, we eat all
That's
this
funny.
crap, and then they say it's the demons that are getting me, or whatever, or the energies that are upon me, and whatever. It's like start cleaning up your diet. You might feel 100 times better. I mean, like it could make a
Yeah.
huge difference. I mean, so I love that you incorporate that in because no matter how much therapy and everything, yeah, you might feel way better at times, but then all of a sudden you keep poisoning yourself with this other stuff. It's like you gotta really address all of it ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're a holistic system. So
Right.
addressing all the parts of the holistic system is really critical for healing. Yeah.
Mm. All right. So if you guys do want to learn more about that, we're going to put a link in the show notes below. Now, with the link we put below, what will that take them to? What's the next step in the process if they wanted to take talk to you or evaluate this opportunity? Where are they going to go to when they click on that link?
Yeah, so it's going to take you to my website, and there's free gifts on the website for you, 52 ways to tell if your parent is a narcissist checklist. There's also the adverse childhood experiences study quiz to help you kind of assess like your um, propensity towards illness and the connection between abuse and illness. Um, so there's a number of different gifts on there. But also you can book a free consultation with me if you think that you might want to work with me or just talk to me about the possibility. So I talk to everybody because I want to make sure you're ready. I want to make sure we're a good fit, and you should too. Anybody who's looking for a therapist really should talk to their therapist first,
Right.
and see if there's rapport and if they can provide what you're looking for. So I think that's important. Yeah.
All right, sounds great to me. I mean, I really feel that, having your expertise for the right people that feel like this is the crux of what they need to deal with right now, would be an ideal fit, perfect solution. So take advantage of it, guys. If you feel like this is at all like your jam, at least go get the free gifts at a minimum to get started. So
Yeah.
we got the link below, and go ahead and take advantage of that if you want to. So, all right. So we're at a part of the show where I do some downloads and a little energy scanning for my guests. So, Dr. Meg, are you ready to receive?
Totally. This is awesome. What
Okay.
a lovely gift.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. All right. Let me go ahead and just take a moment to get centered and see what comes through. That's interesting. So you've got a very, you know, no one's gonna not take you seriously because you've got a professional demeanor, right? So, so that instills confidence in people. But then I get this other thing coming in of like we talked before the show, and I was like, fun's one of my values, or we were talking about that for whatever reasons. But like we're talking stuff at the beginning on the show, and I was just getting like that is really something that wants to come out. Like I was just getting like, what if she started being silly and goofy more, even like in the public domain? Now, maybe you've already done it, I don't know, but um, I'm just guessing more of that is desire because that download came through.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like this weird words came through, like I'm as loose as a goose, and like I don't know, like this funny way of being, and like I like it can maybe that could be healing to people too, like just
Mhm.
to bring on more humor or whatever. I don't know, like there's something to it. So I'm gonna share that one. I'm gonna go to the next one, and then we'll discuss it if you want to. We can go back over it. Okay, let's see what else is coming through. Okay, so I mean, there's so many things to start with, but like, one of the things I see is like it's like a wedding train behind you, but it feels more like you know, it may tie to that, but also I get this feeling of like energy that's still. Again, we've all been doing lots of healing, right? We've cleared so much, but I get this feeling like there's still energy you're bringing forward. It's connected to the root. It feels it does have like an ancestral vibe to it to me. It's kind of like, you know, of course you will bring this forward. Of course, this is all part of your values or how you should be, or like that's all part of like what I hear in it. And I think part of your consciousness still assumes that that's true. Like, yeah, of course, you know, and I should bring these people, these energies, even these ancient people with me forward
Mm.
on my energy. Like I know it sounds like what is he talking about? But like there's something going on with this like dragging this ancestral energy is what I'm hearing forward with you. And it's light. It feels like it's been lightning, but it just like feels like more wants to be released. So anyway, like I always say on the show, I just share, try to pick out whatever to share that feels the strongest to share. So those are the two things for today.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I want to make it lighter.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
More
I'm
lightness
so
would be great.
serious, and I've had people, friends of mine, they're like, you're so light and funny, and
Right,
like, but your stuff is so serious. I'm like,
right.
it's serious stuff. But yeah, I've
Yeah.
been thinking about that. So thank you. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad it was supportive. And people, if you want to check me out, you can go to yoursacredpurpose.com, get your free meditate and make money meditation, and take that in to get your downloads of what wants to unfold. Get your abundance codes through there. There's wonderful vibrations. People do grow their business listening to it from some of the people I've heard from. So go ahead and check that out. It's for free. Meditate, make money. And then I have a Rock Your Sacred Purpose energy scan consultation on the website as well. If you want me to tune into all your energies and chakras and your gifts, and maybe take a look at your business, see how it wants to rock and where it wants to go. That's all part of what I do. So energy healer, intuitive business coach, yeah, all that stuff to take you from a place where you can really stand in your power, especially if you have narcissistic abuse, right? So to bring your power back, your intuitive gifts, your psychic gifts, your healing gifts, I also talk about sales power. How enrolling do you feel you could be when like you're dismissed by your narcissistic parents all the time, right? So like your sales power and to thrive in your business. Like I say, for the healers, to six figures and well beyond if that's what you want to voyage into, right? Okay, so you can check that out at yoursacredpurpose.com. All right, Dr. Meg, I'm going to give you the last words here on the show. Any last words of wisdom for listeners?
Yeah, I would say some of the most powerful things you can do in terms of your healing is one, to make a decision that you're going to the next level. It's time, I'm doing it. I'm going to the next level. Two, engage your intuition. And three, seek help.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. Those are 3 great steps.
Yeah.
It's good for everything, right? So thank you so much, Dr. Meg Haworth, for coming on the show today. It was really, really awesome to be with your energy and with your wisdom and what you had to share, and to support this specific, issue, which is so important. It's been very illuminating for me, and I know for our audience. So thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good thing. All right, and for everyone listening in, keep on tuning in, and we'll keep on rocking it here at Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Till next time. For listening to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, stay tuned for our next upcoming new episodes each Saturday. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to help us to serve you best. As a reminder, you can get your free Meditate and Make Money meditation at www.yoursacredpurpose.com to rock your sacred purpose. Goodbye for now, everybody.